Hey YouTube, Maddie's Daddy 12, Team JMT, coming to you guys with, I guess, a little discussion video, if you would. What we're going to be talking about right now are additional targets for Tour Guide now that Sangan is gone. So Sangan's been banned. We can't use him anymore. We've been dealing with that for about a month now, and Tour Guide is still getting play. So what is it about the other monsters that aren't making them good enough to really play along with Tour Guide, and what do we need to look for in a target for Tour Guide that makes it worth running with Tour Guide? So what Sangan gave us, not just only his effect that was really good. I mean, honestly, he deserves to be banned just by his effect alone. His effect alone, being able to grab the card from your deck, being a floater for you, and grabbing nearly anything out of the deck and adding it to your hand, was busted enough to warrant him being banned. However, with him being a Tour Guide target, just made it even worse than what it was before, because Tour Guide's going to grab him and get him out there even faster, which means you're going to get the effect off even more. But what Sangan actually did for you in a deck running Tour Guide was that if you draw into this monster before you draw into Tour Guide, his effect and his stats are fairly decent. That makes him a standalone monster. Now, you'll hear that a lot, talking about different monsters and stuff, but what the actual criteria that you're looking for when you talk about a standalone monster is, with Tour Guide, paired with Tour Guide, Sangan is completely busted. But by himself, he's still really, really good. His effect, his stats at 1,000, it's not terribly impressive, but his effect alone, being able to grab out nearly anything out of your deck and add it to your hand, Sangan gave you a lot of plays and opened up a lot of stuff for you. And it was his effect by itself that made him a standalone monster. By himself, you could draw into him and he could give you an advantage. He could give you certain things where some of these other monsters may not be able to do that for you. So what I want to talk about now is, what exactly do you have for Tour Guide as targets? The first, we'll talk about Tour Bus. When it's sent to the graveyard, you get to add one monster from either graveyard back to the deck. I guess that's okay. Tour Bus goes to the graveyard, you could add your first Tour Guide back into the deck, making the second Tour Guide live again. So I mean, it's got a couple plays. I would think that it would be okay in Dino Rabbit, putting your vanillas back and making your rabbit live again. So I mean, that's fairly good. However, all your Dino Rabbit decks are running macro now, so he's really not that great. Dark Mimic level 3, when it's destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you get to draw a card. So that's not bad. I mean, being able to draw the card, I know it's not exactly what Sangan gives you in a floater, but it is giving you the card. But still, it's not really what I'm looking for. Now, the green Maju da Iza, I don't know. I can't pronounce this thing. One of my guys in my area has been taking this into his macro rabbit, which is fairly interesting, I guess. It gains, I forgot what it gets. It gains 400 attack for attack and defense for every card removed from play. So that's really good. I mean, I've seen him drop this at 3,000-ish attack, 4,000 attack one time. I've seen it come out with really big attack. However, it is only good in something main decking macro, or maybe defissure, but mainly just macro. So it's really not versatile enough to really be good enough to really stand by itself. just because you have to have the macro play and it has to be live for several turns before this guy's good. Again, Dark Mimic is probably the closest thing that we have to a standalone monster out of the ones that I've talked about so far, because if you draw Tour Bus early game, you've got nothing to put back. So Tour Bus is kind of useless early game. Dark Mimic level 3 would be the only thing out of the first 3 that we've talked about that would be good early game. Dark Resonator is good. He's a tuner, and once per turn when he would be destroyed by battle, he's not. So, I mean, he can early game, he can protect himself. If you draw into him, he is a tuner, so he is able to stand alone, which is what we're looking for, right? However, the issue that I have with Dark Resonator is if you do get it with Tour Guide says that the monster that you use cannot be used for a Synchro Summon. So him being a tuner is it doesn't really matter anymore. Just because you can't utilize it. So yeah, I mean there you go. I mean that's another example there that really is. It's a standalone monster, but it really doesn't pair well with Tour Guide. Possessed Dark Soul is I don't think it's really good enough. It's really just out here just because it has the appropriate stats to be a target. Same thing with Gravity Orb. I really don't think it's really should be out here, to be honest with you. It just has the appropriate stats to be a target. Fabled Kushano. Now that opens up some actual interesting things, because now we get into some cards that are already being ran in some decks. Fabled Kushano it's a good target. The reason it's a good target is because I understand it's a tuner, and I said that's a downfall to Dark Resonator. However, Kushano, once it gets into the graveyard, you can activate its effect in the graveyard to add it back to your hand, which feeds the Fabled engine, which opens up your plays in the Fableds. So is it a good Tour Guide target? Yeah, it's a really good Tour Guide target. Is it a standalone monster for the deck that it's ran in? Yeah, it's a fairly decent standalone monster in the deck that it's ran in. However, when you're playing that, you're playing Fables, so I mean you're really not getting the full potential out of Tour Guide in what should be a competitive deck, because you're playing Fables. Now, Tour Guide gives you some options in Dark Worlds because you have Brow, and so you're able to make all of these plays with your rank 3s, and if you draw into Brow, you have so many discard outlets in that deck that you're able to draw the cards off of this also. So this is a legitimate standalone monster in this game for Tour Guide, because it feeds the deck that it's played in, and it is also the appropriate target for Tour Guide, which pairs very well because it is very useful in the deck where some of these cards are not as useful in the decks that they would be played in. It's good early game, it's good late game. It doesn't matter when you draw this card in Dark Worlds, it's going to be useful to you. So I mean, I feel like that is a great option for you. However, again, you can't really run this in anything else. This is only going to be good in a Dark World deck or in something capitalizing off of the Dark World spells and traps or spells. So yeah, this is probably the best out of the options that I have shown. Just because of what it does, but it's only useful in the Dark World deck. Now, Night Assailant is up here. Night Assailant is again probably another great option. As far as the standalone monsters, this one and Dark Mimic level 3 are the only two that I feel like are legitimate standalone monsters that you could throw out there and be like, okay, this is going to be my Tour Guide target, and I'm going to be okay with this. However, this guy you only get his effect if he's destroyed by battle, and this guy you're only going to get his effect if he's flipped. Now, the other thing about this is Night Assailant is getting a lot of its play, and it's getting some play in Macro Rabbit, which I disagree with. I don't think it really has a place in that deck. I feel like Reaper is a better card for that deck, but Night Assailant is finding some play in there. But the biggest place that it's getting play is in Chaos Dragons. And again, like Brow, Night Assailant has an excellent spot in that deck because if Light Pulsar is in the graveyard, you can discard a light and a dark from your hand to special summon him. When you do that, Night Assailant activates, allows you to add a YuGiOh from your graveyard back to your hand, which those Chaos Dragon decks are running 2 to 3 YuGiOh, which makes Night Assailant even better in that deck, makes YuGiOh even more usable, and it actually makes it to where Light Pulsar only costs you 1 card out of your hand to summon, because you discard the Night Assailant and 1 other card. Night Assailant activates and adds 1 card back to your hand. You discard 2, you get to add 1. It only costs you 1 card to put Light Pulsar on board, a fairly decent boss monster. So there you go, guys. Those are some of the options that I feel like you have to replace your tour guide targets, or to replace and use as tour guide targets. However, completely honest with you guys, in my opinion, if you're not running Fabled Brow or Night Assailant, you really don't need an additional target. And a lot of the decks that I've been running, the running tour guide, if I'm not running Chaos Dragons or Dark Worlds or Fables, which I'm not running Fables very often right now, and I've only got Dark Worlds built here shortly, so Chaos Dragons was the only thing that I was running it with. You know, those are probably the only 3 that I would use. So in my opinion, if you're going to run tour guide and you're not running one of those 3 decks, you probably only need the 2 tour guide. I know that may catch a lot of people off guard, and you're like, well, what if you draw into 2? Well, you know, that's YuGiOh. If you draw into both of them in the opening hand, that just kind of sucks. It does, but it happens. And so yeah, guys, I mean, I don't know how you feel about that, but yeah, tour guide is probably good just played in the 2. I really don't think you have to have the additional target. So that's my opinion on this, guys. I appreciate it. If there's something else that you guys have been trying, if there's a level 3 theme that you guys have been trying and has been working out for you, please message me or comment down below. Let everybody know what's working for you. We only get better with this game if we start communicating and we start letting everybody else know what's working for us. That's the only way we all get better. So I appreciate it, guys. Subscribe, comment down below, show us how much you love us.